Hey, I'm Breanne Williamson, and you are watching the Permanent Rain Press.
Hi everyone, it's Chloe with the Permanent Rain Press. Today I am happy to be joined by Breanne Williamson. How's it going?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you for asking. And I'm so excited to chat with you about Basement 51 because the final episode just dropped earlier this morning. So we'll get into your time making the web series and everything involved with that. But to start off, what can you share about your background in the arts and what sparked that passion in you?
Sure. So I always say that I started as a drama nerd in high school. That was the first experience that I had acting or creating in any given way. And then when I was graduating high school at 16, I was like, well, I haven't made it big, so I better wrap it up. And I went into business school, which obviously is ridiculous. But at that age, at that time, it felt very real. And I think that's something that has been a life lesson for me throughout my life that anytime I feel like I'm too old or I don't have the experience yet, so I might as well wrap it up, I remind myself that I also felt like that at 16. So there's really never a good time and you're never too late, all in one breath. So I took a few years off, went to business school, and realized that I was completely missing that creative side of myself. And then I jumped back in.
I mean, the corporate life isn't for everyone. What were you studying in business school?
Yeah, so I was in marketing. So I mean, the great thing is that everything's connected and I feel like everything happens for a reason. So now when I'm creating, I get to kind of put my marketing hat on when I'm putting my projects out into the world and utilize that. So, it's a great experience that I had, but I think it was a great reminder that that was not the way that I wanted the rest of my life to go.
Yeah, but I do feel like with marketing there, like you mentioned, there are transferable skills with that
Yeah.
specialization. So it's great to be able to kind of use that for your own brand today. And you said before you used to create films as a kid using your family camcorder. I feel
Yeah.
like there's so much like freedom and wonder to create when you're young. Do you have very vivid memories of like the movies you used
Yes.
to create and put together?
Yeah. So I was, first of all, a complete control freak. My poor baby sister was cast in whatever role that I forced her to do. And I remember writing the script. For whatever reason, I was obsessed with musicals, even though I could not sing. And I would write these songs. I'd force my family to watch me practice before recording them a million times, then watch the recordings. We had this one film that I made my sister be the strong man in, where we were doing this circus-esque extravaganza. But it's just so fun thinking back because at the end of the day, I was just a kid with no goal of anyone ever actually seeing or watching it or making, obviously you're a kid making any money. And it's such a fun reminder that at the end of the day, like what we're doing is a lot of fun and we're making just silly, fun things that hopefully someone out there enjoys. At the time, it was my poor family being forced to sit down and watch it. And now I hope that maybe people click at their own will. But other than that, not much has changed.
I mean, also at that time, you're making it because you enjoy it so much, right?
Yeah.
It brings you so much love and you're passionate about it. And I
Mhm.
know you also cited Spice World as one of your favorite films.
Yeah.
And I remember watching that when I was a bit younger, and that uncomfortable alien scene still lives rent free in my head.
Yes. You know what? I actually won that movie at my local video store when I was a kid. There was this box that every time you rented a movie, and we'd go as a family every Friday night and we'd rent a movie, you got to put in a ticket. And it was like the first thing that I ever won, ever. And I won this movie that I got to keep. And I must have watched that thing like 100 times. And I still will argue to the death that that is one of the best cinematic masterpieces of all time. I'm obsessed with that movie.
I know it has so many like campy moments that you look back at. It
Yes.
was a VHS that you won, I'm guessing.
Oh, of course, yes. And I probably just like wore that thing down, rewinding, fast forwarding. It was so campy, it was so outrageous, it was so funny, like the comedy in that film. And again, that's just like what I try and move forward with. I think it's fantastic that there's so many artists out there trying to create really serious, deep, raw things, but I also think there's a space and an importance for really silly, campy stuff out there, and that's how I move.
And I can kind of see, shades and tones of it in your current work. So
Yeah.
we'll get into that. But you mentioned, after school, after marketing, you kind of decided that lifestyle as a career wasn't the one for you. But tell me about that decision to pursue the arts full time. And did you have any reservations choosing this path?
Yeah. Well, of course. I mean, it's such a I'm type A in my core, and it's kind of the constant battle I have. Type A me, like, what's the smart, realistic decision person on one shoulder, and then I've got the creative, silly, just go for it. Let's just see what happens on the other. And it's that constant battle of what's the smart decision and what's the fun one. And I think that helps me in my filmmaking and in my creative endeavors in a lot of ways. But I also have to remember to take the hat off of the realistic vibes every once in a while and just kind of go for it. So I think I've gotten better at that. And that's something that I work on every day.
I know that you identify as a lesbian and your queer identity is ingrained in much of your work today. And to commemorate Pride 2022, you wrote online, I wouldn't be alive today if I didn't decide that being who I am is okay. If you're comfortable, can you share a bit more about your journey to self-acceptance and understanding and how it saved you?
Yeah. You know what? It's so interesting looking back because I was always so ready and eager to accept everyone else for exactly who they were. But that was such a struggle for me to do for myself. I always say that coming out to myself was the hardest part. I think subconsciously I knew who I was for years before I ever looked in the mirror and kind of admitted that to myself. But I was so focused on pushing it down because I just had so many fears. And those fears turned into a lot of self hate. I think a lot of internalized homophobia. I was worried about how that would affect my life, my relationships, my family dynamics. And, when I was younger, a lot of my life was spent trying to stifle or push down who I was. And obviously, that is not a healthy way to live. In turn, I had a lot of mental health struggles, and it just thinking back, the word that comes to mind is just exhausted. I was constantly exhausted of playing the part of someone who I was not. And the biggest gift I ever gave to myself was saying it's okay. Like it's okay. And I think a lot of people when they're struggling with their own journeys of coming out, in order to feel like they are valid or in order to feel like they're ready to take that leap, they feel like they need to say, "Oh my God, I love myself. I'm 100% all in." And I try to share my own experience in a way to give people the opportunity to know that that's not necessarily the way that it always starts. Here I am today. I'm so proud to be a lesbian. I think it's one of the most awesome things about me and my life and adds so much to my experience as a human being. But when I started this journey, I just needed that moment of like, you know what, it's not the worst thing ever and it's okay. And then the ball started rolling. So it's okay if it's just okay at the beginning.
Thank you for sharing all of that. And I
Yeah.
think you being so vulnerable in your videos and your content on YouTube and social media, like it's helping so many people that everyone's journey is different and it's not a linear thing. It doesn't have to be full on acceptance. And I
Yeah.
think that you're living proof of that, especially with what you put out there, what you create. Have you
Thank
found
you.
yourself surrounded by a good and supportive group of people, or did you also have to create and find that community yourself?
Yeah. A bit of both. I mean, I'm very lucky to have some incredibly supportive friends and family members who obviously have been with me from the jump. I also lost a lot of relationships and connections when I came out, which was unfortunate. But from there, it freed up a lot of space for me to connect with what many queer people call their chosen family. And I've created a circle of people that are super empowering and inspiring living their truth around me, and that inspires me to do the same. And I think that's true of every adult, queer or not. I think as we evolve and as we age, we shed certain relationships because they just don't work for us anymore for various reasons. And I think that's no different for queer people, with the exception being that it's maybe a little more obvious when it's time to say goodbye.
I feel like, aging is something like people change also in
Yeah,
general. So it's one of those things like growing older, you have to deal with in any walks of life.
yeah.
I'm curious, what are some of your current favorites in queer media or content? And is there anything upcoming that you are excited for as a consumer of art?
Yeah. So I am obsessed with Mae Martin and Wayward. I've been loving seeing the success of that, obviously, as a Canadian, as a queer person. Um, Original content, original storytelling being championed and, hitting the charts in such an amazing way is so cool to see. And I always say, as a creative, when I see other people win, it reminds me that it's possible. So I love seeing other creatives in my community, whether that be being Canadian or LGBTQ plus, winning, because I'm like, okay, they did it. I can too. I think it's a big driver for me. And with that said, I'm very, very excited because a friend of mine, Robbie Hoffman, just recorded their comedy special and also a HBO show. Ink has been signed on that. So it's cool to just see queer people winning and knocking down those doors.
Speaking about, amazing queer content out there, you did release your sapphic romantic comedy Aging Out in
Yeah.
2023. What key lessons did you learn while making that movie that you've taken with you to your later projects?
Oh my gosh, so many. So when I first started filmmaking, I had absolutely no idea what was going on, no idea how to do it. And I joke that if I did have any clue, I probably would have never done it because I would have just been so fearful of the hard work. So ignorance is what started me on this path. I will acknowledge that. And when I did my first film coming out, I learned a lot from that, and then I did Aging Out. And I like to say that each time I do it, I collect like, oh my God, never again moments. And then I also collect a lot of things that I'm like, yeah, that absolutely is something that I need to do every time. So, the first thing is I realized very quickly there's a reason that Friends was filmed in the same damn apartment for 10 seasons. And if a big budget show like that is doing it, maybe me with my paperclip and granola bar budget shouldn't be writing things that have 20 locations and 200 background performers. So, stripping back, I think every writer has that moment of like, okay, yeah, of course, here's what I'd love to do. Now, what's possible? So the flexibility of stripping back stories and getting to the core of character driven writing, and the focus on the storytelling and characters opposed to everything going on around you, which often takes a lot of money to make. It was a learned lesson. And then more tangibly, and specifically, I love shooting with two cams. I think that it's a game changer for indie film. It makes everything move so much quicker. It's fun for comedy because you just get to live in those moments and do a lot more improv. So that's something that is now an absolute for every project I do. I need two cams, which is a bigger investment off the jump, but I think it's something that is an absolute, as I said, game changer for when you have 7 days to make way too many pages happen.
How has it been for you kind of finding your own working style, like as a director? Like, have there been moments where you're like, maybe I was a little too harsh, maybe I was a little too lenient? Like, how is that finding what works for you?
Yeah. Well, I think something great is that because I've worn so many hats, I know what I like in all of those seats and what I really don't like. So when I'm being the director and wearing that hat, I try and remind myself what the actors need because I've been in that seat and I know how frustrating it is when you're maybe not getting a certain amount of feedback or support from a director. Same with, the producers and the crew and understanding, time is money. And obviously in a director's seat, you'd love to shoot the scene 20 times, but that's not going to be the reality on an indie project. So I think my ability to put myself in those different seats definitely helps. And I always say that I'm an actor forward director because I'm an actor too. So I understand how validating and how actors are little sensitive babies. And I can say this because I am an actor. We're sensitive little beings and we are absolutely the toddlers of set. Everyone else is doing their amazing professional work and we need to be coddled a bit. So when I'm in that director seat, I try and remember that and, give the actors their love because they are, really giving themselves and being so vulnerable. So they deserve the feedback. But yeah, so it's fun to navigate, but also flipping it, it makes me realize as an actor how I can be a better actor for a director. So it kind of works both ways.
Bit of a like mutually beneficial thing for
Yeah.
you really as an artist and in all
Yeah.
facets of what you do
Hmm.
with your projects. We will get into Basement 51 now, and as mentioned at the beginning, we are discussing spoilers for all 6 episodes of the series, so please make sure you've watched those on YouTube before continuing. What can you share about the concept and the combination of queer comedy and sci-fi?
Yeah. So Basement 51 is a story of a ragtag group of comedians and their exes and family members and whoever else decides to show up, stuck in a basement at the time that aliens land on Earth. So it's super campy, it's silly, it's a little bit spooky, it's fun, and the heart of the series is the feeling of the world is crumbling around you, but as an individual, as a human being, there's still dreams that you want to happen. And I think that's something we can all relate to, especially right now. We turn on the news and we're like, whoa. But then you turn off the news and you open your email inbox, and there's things going on in your personal life that you would love to see happen. And it's this constant ebb and flow of humanity, of, being fearful for what's going on in the world, but also being an individual and having your own ego and drive and goals, as silly as some of those goals may seem in the bigger picture. So, we see these characters navigating something obviously on the campy, overdone extreme sense. We see them navigating the world crumbling around them, but then also having these internal pulls and struggles, which is fun to play with.
Definitely. And they're also navigating all these, relationships in addition to things like their
Yeah.
careers and knowing that it's a web series, like when you're writing it, limited episodes, limited runtime, how does that affect your script writing with respect to, again, like how much you can include set-wise, but also how much you can flesh out these characters?
Oh yeah, big time. I mean, I'm a character-driven writer, as I mentioned. I would love to just juice it and find all these layers with all of these characters, but in indie filmmaking, you got to say, okay, what do we need included to drive the story forward? And that's tough. When I originally wrote this concept, it was written as an 8 episode 30 minutes an episode series. So now behind the scenes, we're hoping to pitch that and make it happen. And hopefully it could even be, we have a 3 season arc written. But then you have to go, okay, but how can I get this out there in a way that I can make it in a week in my parents' basement? And that looks completely different. So I think making sure there's moments that shine for each character is a priority and really shows who they are quickly, meeting them where they are. We don't have the luxury of finding them along the way. So it's kind of more of how can we bring these characters on screen and smack the audience in the face with who they are in a way that immediately you know what their drive is. So that changes a little bit, and it does make it easier when they're stuck in a basement because it's just one basement that you have to shoot in. So that was obviously intentional, makes it a little bit easier. And yeah, anyone who does indie film, they know it's all about flexibility and finding a way that make it happen. So scrappy filmmaking is fun in that way because it's just problem solving.
I felt like having it in that basement set was great because, like you mentioned, it really allows for the dialogue to shine and these interactions between all of the different characters. And I loved a lot of the lines in this series. The one that stuck out to me was the QR codes are destroying this planet, which I feel is so relatable as a millennial. And yeah,
Yeah.
there were so many, like Aaron in particular had a lot of great one-liners as well. Which character was your personal favorite to write and why?
My favorite to write was Cosmo because Cosmo is so different from me. I love writing characters that are so different from me, where I'm almost looking at them and I can't find where I would live in them at all. But I also love writing a character that on the page in a quick little, 3 sentence write up would seem like a complete dick. But then if you took a moment and got to know them, you find that softness in those layers. I think that's fun to play with. So, our actor, Darcy Boone Collins, I think, did a fantastic job of finding that likability in what would traditionally be a very unlikable character. So yeah, Cosmo has a special place in my heart because I just think he's so strangely likable.
When it came to casting, did you already have people, actors in mind for your characters? And was Max always written for yourself?
So first, I didn't know if I was gonna play Celine or Max. I didn't write anyone for me. I knew I'd probably live in one of those characters just because obviously I'm not playing Cosmo. Um, but there's pieces of me in both characters and all characters with maybe the exception of Cosmo, although the softness is there, so that could be argued. But I did have a couple actors in mind that are stand-up comedians. So Darcy Boone Collins and Sean McDonald are both friends of mine and amazing comedians here on the Vancouver comedy scene. And so much of my character inspiration comes from being in those green rooms and seeing these different personalities. And they're very different from the characters themselves, but I just knew they could make these characters shine. So when I wrote those two characters, Aaron and Cosmo, I definitely had them in mind. And then for the rest of the characters, we did an open casting call. And honestly, my decision to play Max really was when I saw Sophie Holland tape to play Celine, and I was like, "That's Celine. I'm not Celine." So it came down to the casting process for deciding kind of where I was gonna sit.
How was the casting process? Like you mentioned, like the open call, like for you as a director, is it still really difficult to make those decisions? Because, these are characters that you've sat with for a while and you have high hopes for them to be able to flesh them out. So as a director, like how do you choose?
Well, it's interesting because again, everything's kind of connected and it helps me as an actor. I think a lot of directors would agree when you're watching something that's so close to you, often the character just kind of shows themselves. And watching the tapes, there are so many talented actors and individuals, and often it's something that you can't even put your finger on. And as an actor, that is very freeing because obviously I send in a hell of a lot of self tapes and I hear back nothing from almost all of them. And there's that need and want to be like, what's the why? How can I level up above everyone else? And what would make me stand out? And you're always looking for that kind of hidden secret. And really, there isn't one because I would argue, and some of the cast might give me a phone call about this. I would argue there was a lot of tapes that were more maybe traditionally more perfect in terms of acting style, in terms of lighting, in terms of setup, all the things that they tell you to nail as an actor. But when you see the character, you just see the character. So honestly, the decision for me was really easy, and it didn't mean that everyone else wasn't absolutely fantastic. It's just sometimes you see the person and you're like, yep, that's them.
Well, I think you did a tremendous job choosing because the cast chemistry was fantastic on
Thank you.
screen, especially like all of, there's the group scenes, but there's also a lot of like one-on-one scenes and like
Yeah.
trio scenes. And in particular, I liked the ones that you shared with Avril as Luna and Sophie as Celine in Max's room in episodes 2 and 3.
Yeah.
So, how were those scenes to film and finding Max's hurt emotions given the history between the characters?
Yeah. I mean, as an actor, filming and becoming queer characters, obviously I'm pulling from my own life experiences. Sometimes that's really fun life experiences, and sometimes it's not so fun life experiences. And I think the reason I love some of those scenes is because they're so real and relatable. We had a lot of great feedback from viewers specifically about the scene between Celine and Max discussing. Celine mentions basically that she regrets not kind of going all in with Max, and Max explains her hurt with Celine not being proud of their relationship and being willing to put it out there in the world in a public way, and feeling hidden. And that, as a queer person, unfortunately, is relatable to a lot of folks. I've been there. I've been the one hiding the person, and I've been the one being hidden. Both of them suck. And I think diving into those characters, it's tough because you're reliving those emotions, but it's also something that is important for me to do as a writer because I know when I put it out there, people are going to watch and go, okay, you know, they got through this, I can too, or I'm not alone in this feeling, you know? So, important one to write, tough one to act, sometimes bubbles up emotions, but I'm really proud of that scene and proud of the layers of those storylines because of that.
When you said that line as Max, I found someone who loved me, but not someone who was proud of it. I think that, for all the lightness again and comedic moments, like that line really did hit hard. So I know it was probably like a painful place to think about digging into, but you found
Yeah.
it in the character and it really landed. Kind of jumping to the cliffhanger, obviously, in episode 6. Tell me about that ending, like choosing that ending, knowing that at least at that point in time when you filmed, like you wouldn't have created something that came next. So obviously, for context, that is the potential arrival of the aliens. They have a couple people in their group missing. They're sitting
Yeah.
there with those tinfoil hats. So take me through that.
Yeah. So, it was tough because we do know what happens next. I have the show Bible written. I have what happens to these characters both on the page and in my mind. But the struggle is I always want to just put it all out there, right? I did that with my first two films, Coming Out and Aging Out. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to wait for the traditional yeses. I'm just going to stick them online for free because I want people to see it. This time, I decided, let's see if we can make something bigger happen. Let's see if we could have a really obnoxious dream and make it happen. And unfortunately, for that obnoxious dream to happen, we have to keep some things behind closed doors for now because we need places for this to go. We need to see what happens to these characters. So, really, when I took the 8 episode season, full length, 30-minute episode season, and put it into this web series, really, this entire web series is the pilot. And it's the taste of getting to know these characters before we see them go on this big epic journey that we have in mind. So, the hope, of course, is that we will see that play out with this show getting picked up in a larger capacity. The plan B is we make a season 2 for YouTube. And that is not off the table either, because I think that these characters in this story deserves to continue. I think the viewers are really enjoying it and I want them to know what happens. So my promise to all the viewers out there is I won't leave you hanging forever. We'll see how it picks up, whether that's on a TV show or whether that's a season 2 web series. We're yet to know, but the characters will be back.
Reassurance from the filmmaker directly that this is not the end. But on that note of, pitching the web series, how has that process been going for you? Like, I know it's probably not the first time you've been involved in things like this, but in terms of, getting your project out there for wider audiences, for funding, how has that been going for you?
Yeah, so actually, this is the first time that I'm pitching in a traditional way. I have come at this whole filmmaking experience basically in the opposite way that every other person has. I tend to do that with everything in my life. I'm always finding the like open window in the back room and crawling through it opposed to walking through the front door. So, navigating and learning, it's been a steep incline, but like I said with my two previous films, I just wanted to get them out there, and that's what happened. And this whole series is kind of a learning lesson for me. I'm figuring it out as I go, and it's been really exciting. But I'm also, like everything I've ever done, realizing what I don't know very quickly. And that can be frustrating a lot of times. I know every filmmaker or anyone out there can relate to that, that you're like, okay, here's the end game, but in order to get there, I have to have all these things. And in order to get all those things, I have to already have done all these other things. That how would I do these things without these things? It's just one big crazy web of frustration often. So I'm slowly moving through that maze, and I'm very excited to say that I've had some great pitch meetings so far. We have some things happening behind the scenes. I will not put my shoulders down and stop charging forward until I am in a trailer on set. Because you just never know. But I'm going to do everything I can to claw my way to uh to that trailer.
We love the drive. We appreciate the passion, obviously. I think that's what you have to do when you're a filmmaker, especially in indie filmmaking, as you've said. Can you tell me a bit about the team you assembled behind the scenes, like how it came together with all of the crew and your fellow creatives?
Yeah. So there's a lot that I do not know and I'm not good at in filmmaking. And I think that's a superpower of mine, being like, here's the long list of everything that I do not bring to the table. So where are some incredible humans that are rock stars in those avenues, and how can we collaborate and work together to make it happen? Because you can't run the whole show. You can't be good at everything. You can't know everything. So along the way, coming out, aging out, my various projects, working on other indie projects in the city, whether it be on crew or as an actor, I have collected, much like the characters that we see trapped in Basement 51, a hodgepodge of human beings that I have found to be absolute rock stars at what they do, and allowed them to show up and just kick ass, because I'm not going to try and tell them how they can do their thing better. And I think that's important in indie filmmaking, to try and find people that can show up and, release the ego and just realize we're all here to do this scrappy, really exciting, passion forward thing. And flexible individuals is huge. So Neve Endy, I will work with till the day I die, hopefully, if he'll keep answering my phone calls. Incredible producer, incredible actor. He would hate if I said that because his nightmare is being in front of the camera. Incredible editor. He's phenomenal. And Brian Sessi is incredible cinematographer. And, you collect these characters and they collect me along the way, and then we all support each other in all these crazy dreams.
It's so important that you believe in the same vision, but there's also a lot of trust involved in that. So I'm glad you've, found a good group of people who you can turn to and collaborate with
Mm.
in multiple projects. You also worked with an intimacy coordinator, and it's not your first time working with one on a project. So how vital is this role for you to include on your sets?
Well, very important, because being the writer and the director who's also putting myself in a makeout scene as an actor, I can't think of anything more creepy than to not have an intimacy coordinator. I mean, I think that there should always be an intimacy coordinator, but I definitely know that it's just an absolute need when people are wearing multiple hats, because there, as much as you like to pretend, there's ways to separate yourself and, okay, I'm the director right now, okay, now I'm the actor, and blah blah blah, sure, whatever, it all blends together. So if I have a goal for the scene as the director and as the writer, obviously I've written it. So as an actor, I'm already in, and I don't want anyone else to feel pressure, because there's always a way to be flexible. There's always a way to rewrite the scene where we can get the same message delivered without something physical happening. There's ways to cut away from it, there's ways to imply it. So I always want actors to know that there's options, and a third party intimacy coordinator is the way to do that, because it's so hard to say no to the person that booked you. I've been in that seat as an actor where you just want to be the yes man. You want to be just excited to be there and like, yeah, sure, yeah, of course. And you don't want anyone to ever feel that pressure in terms of intimacy. So I love intimacy coordinators. I think that they are just stars at what they do, and I think every set should have one.
So well said. And it's such an important role to have, especially, in today's day and age, like even before, but I think it's becoming more prevalent on sets
Yeah.
now, which is really great. Tell me about the overall filming experience, especially opposite your cast, because you did release a blooper reel for episodes 1 to 3. And despite
Mhm.
some of the heavier scenes, like there were a lot of laughs, there were a lot of smiles, multiple takes for certain scenes as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so fun doing comedy. I recommend it to everyone. Pull out your iPhone and make a sketch in your parents' basement with your friends. Nothing will bring you such, wholesome joy as that will. There's something just so special about people bringing themselves to comedic roles. And we had so many amazing actors on set who also happened to be comedians. And that means that magic happens on some takes, and on other takes, in some ways it's so magical and so funny that you just can't help but break. So we had so many laughs, which was so much fun. And also a lot of improving, which, going back to what I said earlier, the power of having two cameras, because there are so many moments that were not originally on the page that we might have not been able to edit and use had we not had those two cameras going. So it was super fun just to see kind of what popped out. I think we all came onto set excited to be professional and focus and be driven, but also with the awareness that, like, hey, let's take a moment and realize that we're in Bree's parents' basement filming a silly, campy comedy about aliens landing. Like, this is really not that serious. We're lucky to be here, and it's really fun. So we tried to bring that energy to set, and I think we did. And we have another blooper reel coming, which I'm excited about, from episodes 4 to 6.
How did your parents feel taking over their basement for the shoot?
My poor parents. Oh my God. Isn't it fun having a creative person in your family? What a nightmare. No, they're so supportive. They're so wonderful. And I'm so lucky to have them. Like, my family, both my parents and my sister, I can call them at any time and say, hey, I've got this crazy idea. And, they have their moment of the eye roll and, like, of course you do. But at the end of the day, they always show up for me and open their doors for me in this case. So my parents were great, and they love it too because it's fun for them because they live a very corporate lifestyle. So all of a sudden you have this, like, hodgepodge group of creatives in your basement doing this crazy stuff, and they're looking around, they're like, you all are in your 30s, like, we're playing dress up right now, what's going on? And we're like, yes, we are, and that's exactly what we're doing. So it's fun to see them live through that too. And yeah, I'm very grateful for the support.
In particular, you did give a special thanks to your mom in the credits, who you said
Yeah.
has believed in every dream I've dared to chase. Can you tell me a bit about her specific support for you and your career and how her belief has really inspired you in what you've created?
Yeah. I think every creative and every person deserves someone in their life who absolutely champions their delusions. And for me, that is my mom. I think it's great to have the grounding person in your life who says, okay, but what's the realistic approach? How can we get there? But it's also great to have that person that you can call and you can say, hey, I've got this idea and I think I can do it. And without even hearing it, they're like, yeah, obviously you can. Like, yeah, that's happening. Yeah, you got to go for it. And my mom is that for me. Like, she's the person that she removes all the barriers and the walls of, oh, but how would you do that? And, well, what about that? And, well, that's really competitive. And who knows about that? She's always been that for me my whole life. And I think that's why I am so delusional and so crazy, because of that. And that is something that I think is great for this industry because you have to believe that it can happen. And I love my mom for that. So I wanted to give her a special shout out because as much as I have a lot of supportive people in my life, they might be a little bit more realistic. And my mom just is just the ultimate dream supporter. So I love her for that.
Amazing. Was Leo's seasonal stash, was that actually items from your parents?
Yeah. So I actually wrote that in because I was like, where the hell is all this stuff going to go? And I can't afford a storage bin. And we have to put in all the set deck for that makes sense for the actual characters. But of course, we have all this stuff from the basement that would usually just be here, like my niece's high chair and my sister's wedding stuff, and like family photo albums and my dad's Peloton, and so I was like, okay, where the hell is all this shit gonna go? I was like, okay, hold on. What if we wrote in a pile? And that's the thing, like those things will always be some of my favorite memories of creating indie, because especially when you write comedy, there's always a fix. And it can be a super silly, campy fix, and where people are going, was this intentional? Was it not? And yeah, I love the pile. I love Leah's pile. And it's really just all of my parents' stuff.
That's so great that you could write that in. I mean, as
Yeah.
props, and then it becomes like whose character, like who would it make the most sense to belong to, and then obviously the landlord's
Yeah.
son. So I think it was very true to character, and it fit
Thank
well
you.
for how you wrote him. I do have to ask, like obviously there's secrets of what you want the show to be like, the full
Yeah.
8 episodes or however you see
Hmm.
it in the future. Would
Yeah.
there be more stand up? Like, would we get to see Max, Cosmo, and Aaron actually do stand-up comedy?
Okay. So a little bit behind the scenes, because why not? Again, I do things in a different way than everyone else, so I might as well just say things that I'm not supposed to say. The way that I've written the series itself is it actually takes place in the comedy club and the basement under the comedy club. So Max and Aaron live in the basement under the comedy club. And, we see these characters in the same way. Leo is the son of the owner of this building where they live. And we see the characters in the same way. But again, I had to shrink it for web series budget and capacity. So if we get to see this series play out as a show, spoiler alert, you might see Luna, who actually works as the waitress at that comedy club. And that's how they met. And you might see Celine as the bartender, per se. I don't know. So, there's a way that they live more in this comedy club as well. And it's also, in my mind, a great opportunity where we might see some more comedy, both from the characters you've already seen and maybe from some drop-in guests along the way.
That sounds very intriguing. So I hope that you get to see this vision through because I thought the characters were great from what we saw with them. So there's only so much more. There's so much more of the possibilities that you could do making this more of a full length. You've talked about indie filmmaking. You are an advocate for it. Can you tell me about how you've had to advocate for yourself in the BC film community and have you felt supported being a part of it?
Yeah, so I mean, as I mentioned, I've kind of crawled in through the back window. So some people love that and some people don't. That's the reality. I didn't go to film school. I don't have traditional training. Um, and I get why a lot of people really respect that and love that that's there. And also, let's be real, a lot of times school, and I know this from being in business, is a lot about marketing. So a lot of these people already have long-term relationships and networking that they've established while they were learning in school that might be even more useful and tangible than what they were actually learning in the textbooks. So I kind of got in late. I'm green in terms of networking and relationships, but I have found that in general, the film community has been very accepting and welcoming me with open arms. I think a big part of that is because I'm willing to admit what I don't know. So I don't, try and pretend that I have knowledge that I can't offer, or experience that I don't have. And so far, that's worked for me. Just being really honest about what I can bring to the table and what I can't, and being someone who's not an asshole to work with, goes a long way, I think. So yeah, I think that the BC film community has been great and very warm and welcoming to me. It's more my own insecurities and working through those of how I can, invite myself into the room and say, no, it's okay that you can be here. There's a bit of imposter syndrome there. But I'm working on it. And I think a lot of that is just continuing to create and get better at what I do from experience.
I think that you are making up for lost time now, but it really helps to, be so authentic and what you do and how you put yourself out there. How do
Mhm.
you personally find a healthy balance between your creative pursuits as an actor, filmmaker, writer, comedian, and content creator?
Yeah. I think it's less about balance for me and more about they fuel each other. You know, I'm not waiting for the yes when I'm sending in the self tapes because once I send that off, then I'm sitting down and I'm writing my own thing. Um, when I'm not writing, I get to go and, live in the green room at a comedy location and chat with these people who are in their own right cast of characters. So I get inspiration from doing that. And when I get up and I do stand-up comedy, I'm really testing jokes in front of a live audience, which, as we know, marketers pay a lot to get to do that, to test with focus groups. So I get to do that for free. And I get to eat a plate of chicken wings after I do it. So, all of them fuel each other. And if one isn't working one week, I don't book anything or I'm bummed out about that audition that I really thought was going to be mine. Because we all decide that when we get the sides as actors. Oh, this one's it. And then you don't hear back, but then I get to say, that's okay. I've got this other thing going on. Or, that's okay. I'll go to a show tonight. So I think they fuel each other. I think the balance is having all of them there to support one another so I don't spiral into panic and despair.
Yeah, that ended on a very somber note, but I think that, to have all these outlets and to still have that energy to put
Yeah.
into each one is something that is so important in this lifestyle that you've chosen. How do you overcome a creative block in your own work? And at the same time, like, where do you consistently source inspiration from?
Yeah. Just getting out in the world. I think we spend too much time in our own apartments, and I'm the first to do. Sometimes, some days I look around and I go, God, I didn't even leave this place. Like, I've been in here all damn day. I wonder why I'm sad. So it's, getting outside and seeing the people at the grocery store. Who do you bump into? How are they navigating life? Getting on the SkyTrain and looking around, getting in those green rooms and watching these real life comedy characters right in front of my eyes. That's where the inspiration comes from. I think my superpower beyond any actual God-given talent, because I would say in a lot of ways, as much as I've always loved being creative, I always wanted to be on Broadway. Well, I can't sing. I wanted to be a dancer. Well, I was pretty mediocre at that. I'm not someone who was like the natural born prodigy, but I do have the ability to look at humans and put them on paper. So getting out and actually communicating with human beings in real time in the real world, I think keeps that inspiration coming.
I love the SkyTrain mention because you can overhear some interesting conversations at any
Oh yeah.
time of day on the SkyTrain.
Yes.
But you also do have like some interesting, engaging series segments, like you've done street interviews on
Hmm.
on your socials, Gay Girl Tips, which is another one. So it's nice to have these things that you can continue kind of building on as well.
Totally. Yeah, I love talking to people. People are crazy and I'm crazy and it's so fun to just think like I'm looking out my window right now and there's all these windows and there's all these people doing all these things and they don't know that I'm here doing this thing and that's like really creepy and also fun to me. So I love getting out in crowds and just looking around and thinking about that. It's inspiring because everyone like very much going back to the series. everyone thinks their thing is the most important thing, right? Like as humans, naturally, we are ego driven and we're goal driven for our own individuality. And in the series we see these characters like everything's happening around them, but they're still like they have this want, whether it's a relationship goal or a professional goal. But then as the viewer, you get to take a step back and look at the bigger picture and be like, it's fucking crazy that they're playing spin the bottle while aliens are landing. Like, what is going on right now? So I love that. And I think it's the kookiness is what makes life fun.
You have nearly 800,000 followers on TikTok and 185,000 followers on Instagram. I know it's just numbers at the end of the day, but what does that engagement and support mean to you? Like, how have your followers uplifted you, and how special is it to know that what you create is resonating with others?
Yeah, big time. I mean, I think we'd be liars as creatives if we said that we weren't excited about people watching what we poured our heart and soul into. I think that is a really exciting part of the process, like releasing it and seeing how people receive it. And they are just numbers, but there's a lot of people that have been in the community of my social media platforms for years. I know these names. I see these names in the comments. I've met them at my shows. So I try to remember that as much as we can get all, stuck in the algorithm and analytics, that these are people and how exciting that they're taking 10 minutes out of their day to click and watch something silly that I made. That's very exciting to me because we're all starved for time. So I always appreciate when people check out my work. And also, something really rewarding is when we are in that basement jammed together and there's all these amazing crew members and cast. I get to say, hey, at the end of the day, hopefully people are actually going to see this thing. Because people put a lot of damn work into that and they make peanuts to do it? So it's an exciting thing that we get to deliver it to a certain amount of followers that might be excited to click.
And although I just saw the sixth episode that premiered this morning, there were already comments on there. So, people are excited, like they're following along the journey. They wanted
Mhm.
to see what happened next in Basement 51. So, I couldn't be happier for you and the team behind it. And I really hope
Thank
that
you.
it develops into something bigger and much more. I have a couple more questions for
Yeah.
you as a Vancouver local. What are some of your must visits in the city, and what would your perfect day in Vancouver look like?
That's a good question. I grew up in North Vancouver, so I love North Van, particularly Lynn Valley. I could just walk around Lynn Valley all day. Um, Talk about a cast of characters there. There is a spot down Lower Lonsdale in North Vancouver called Cream Pony, and it has the best fried chicken and donuts. So that's where I would probably go to eat. And then I would probably head downtown. I mean, if you're a creative in Vancouver and you don't mention the Rio Theater, what are you doing? The Rio Theater is just constantly making moves and showing indie projects and supporting indie creators. So you got to go, catch a flick there. As I mentioned earlier, we have some amazing stand-up comedy in Vancouver. So Comedy Underground, Comedy After Dark, Little Mountain Gallery. Any day of the week, you can jump into one of these locations for, as little as $5 and see some incredible stand-up comedy. It feels good to laugh. So I think, get out there and go. And then I would probably go grab a drink at the Birdhouse, which is a queer establishment here in Vancouver, and they are constantly creating space for LGBTQ plus events. They've got great music, they got good drinks, so I'd probably round out the night there.
That sounds like a very fulfilling, jam-packed day. But I
Yeah,
think, like, as a creative, you're constantly like wanting to, fill your mind with,
yeah.
good people and good content. And Vancouver does have so many great spots in the city
Yeah.
for that. I have one final question for you, our signature question. If you could be any ice cream flavor, which would you be and why?
Okay, well, I think the obvious answer would be like a rainbow sherbet because I'm like, I'm a lesbian, I'm a rainbow ice cream. Or like an everything but the kitchen sink sort of ice cream because I wear a lot of hats. But truthfully, if I'm being honest with myself, I think I'm like a chocolate ice cream. I think I'm a classic chocolate because I'm super loyal, I'm super consistent. You know exactly what you're going to get. So I might not be, the sparkliest in the room, and I might not, be the most exciting. I might, just seem like, when you're looking at the 60 flavors, I might blend in a little bit in that moment. But I think when you choose me, you know you're going to enjoy it. You know what you're going to get. And I think I'm straight up. I think my friends know that I show up for them time and time again. And I also think that I have a big heart for nostalgia. So I love classic chocolate. And it's just also the ice cream that I choose time and time again. And I like to think that I choose me time and time again, both choosing to live as me authentically as my queer self and also championing my own work.
That's one of the best answers I've heard in a while. I feel like
Oh,
it started
thanks.
off very rational and then it got like metaphorical, and I love it. I think you can't go
Nice.
wrong with a classic chocolate. So it was so nice to chat with you, Brianne. You are such a like authentic human being, and I can't wait to see what else you create in your career. I thank you so much for taking the time to chat today.
Thanks, Chloe. This was so fun. Thanks for having me.
Of course, for all those watching, make sure to check out the fantastic web series Basement 51. We will also post Brianne's social media links below to stay up to date with new content. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.
Thanks.